Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this amazing, amazing, amazing day of October 19th, 2020. So much going on in the world. We just want to first off introduce myself. My name is Jonathan Riley. I am the founder and CEO of Better, a creative agency here in Portland, where we focus on creating change for communities that need it in color. I'm here as a special guest to be able to be a part of an amazing group of panelists, an amazing group of people, an amazing group of sponsors, partners, friends, adventurers, creatives, and those who are really seeking change within the outdoor industry. So I'm very honored to be here. I'm very thankful to Travel Oregon for allowing us to be here and to hold this ground, and the Oregon Outdoor Coalition, Trails Coalition, Stephanie Knoll and Scott Bricker and Hillary have been amazing. So thank you guys. One of the things we definitely want to dive into this week and today is to be able to share different stories that allow us to create different messages of change. So far, so gone, we've seen so many things happen in recent months that have tore people apart and have given us a reason to think differently. So I think for the way we've been really able to curate this conversation, we really want you to leave thinking differently. We want to create some form of discomfort that allows you to think in a way that creates an actionable change. So with that, we want to get started. Just to let you know, Stephanie Knoll and Hillary Sager are here providing tech support. So if you have any issues or anything that we can help with as far as your tech, as well as if you're having trouble hearing us, please feel free to let us know. We want to make sure that we're here and loud and clear. And also, as well as any Q&As you may have, questions and answers we can share back. You can find the Q&A icons at the Zoom bar, control bar, probably at the bottom of your screen. And please feel free to submit questions at any time during the presentations using that Q&A function. This webinar will be recorded, and we're expected to make recordings available to Travel Oregon's YouTube later this fall to be able to share this message even further and make sure that all those who couldn't join us this day can feel to understand where some of those conversations of change took place. Our summit host will then be able to give us a way to make sure all these things are available to you as well, so you can be able to share and continue to tell the message. I do want to go over some housekeeping rules, some housekeeping opportunities that we have here that will really give us an understanding of where we want to make sure that you guys feel safe and comfortable and able to feel a place of growth. This is where I want to make sure I got it right, because I know we just had some additional ones that added to it. So just one moment for myself. But I think Stephanie got me for it. All right. Oh, I think that was most of my my housekeeping rules, actually. So if there's anything else, my name again is Jonathan Riley. I'm here to support and service everybody here on our amazing guests. And be able to be of assistance to make sure that everybody understands where we're going with this conversation and have a positive interaction. So with no further ado, I want to be able to pass it over to the amazing Karen Kitchen, who is going to be able to bless us with a land acknowledgement as we take forth the next step of change. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Multnomah County is sited upon the ancestral homelands of the Multnomah, Molalla, Kathlame, Chinook, Clackamas, Tualatin Kalapuya, and many other indigenous nations. These nations have become the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians, as well as the Chinook Nation and Cowlitz Nation in Washington State. Many bands of indigenous people have made their home here during specific seasons of the year and up through the Columbia River. This area was a place of confluence, and the Confederated Tribes of the Warm Springs, the Umatilla, the Wyam, the Wasco Wishram, the Nez Perce, the Yakima, and many others have a strong relationship to this area and to the Columbia River. We ask these First Nations peoples of the past, present, and future for forgiveness for the genocide and displacement of families and relatives. We pray for healing and reparations between the institutional community and the Native communities and with the land. We recognize and respect the enduring relationships that Indigenous people have with their traditional homelands. We hope to inspire positive ongoing action and relationship as we demonstrate our commitment to beginning the process of working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism. Through our collective and individual actions, we can walk the path of repair, reconciliation, and cultural revitalization. And now I'd like to sing a little song for you, a song that celebrates the salmon, the culture of the river people in this area, and recognizes the importance of clean water and thriving ecosystems and the powerful relationship between people and our animal and plant relatives. It was written by Arlene Neskai, and it's called Fishing at Salilo. We were fishing at Salilo, fishing at Salilo, we were fishing at Salilo, everyone was there, way-I-yo, way-day-do. We were fishing at Salilo, fishing at Salilo, way-day-day. We were fishing at Salilo, everyone was there, way-I-yo, way-day-do. We were fishing at Salilo, fishing at Salilo, way-day-day. We were fishing at Salilo, everyone was there, way-I-yo, way-day-do. Way-I-yo, 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 way-day-day. We were fishing at Salilo, fishing at Salilo, way-day-day. We were fishing at Salilo, everyone was there, way-I-yo. Thank you. And now I want to pass to Xavi Borja and he's going to introduce our keynote speaker. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you for that so much. That was incredible. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm really excited to be here and give you an introduction to today's panel speaker. Today's speaker, most folks would recognize as the founder of Latino Outdoors. And for folks who are unfamiliar with Latino Outdoors, it is a national nonprofit with over 20 chapters now nationwide. And the mission, which drives this work forward, is to inspire, connect, and engage the Latinx communities into the outdoors by embracing our culture and family as a part of the outdoor narrative, ensuring that our history, heritage, and leadership are valued and represented within this sector. Now, who the heck am I? My name is Xavier Borja, and I usually just go by Xavi, but I started a local chapter of Latino Outdoors here in Central Oregon and serve as the program coordinator to drive the mission of Latino Outdoors here in the community in which I grew up in, that being Madras, and I now live in Bend, and therefore encompassing the Central Oregon area. Because of this platform, aside from making strides of driving the mission forward, I've been afforded a multitude of other opportunities, most notably being a member of the Governor's Task Force, which was a roadmap to the outdoors, as well as being a part of the Racial Justice Council, focusing on environmental equity and serving on that committee. And I share these things about myself as not a means of self-promotion, but as an example of the power of invitation and how that invitation itself manifests into other great things. Latino Outdoors itself, the entity, gave me an invitation to feel that a kid like myself from Madras could make a difference in the community in which I grew up in. And now for a quick story. The very first time I'd actually met Jose was by way of invitation from himself. Jose had sent me a direct email or a direct message on Instagram. And in short, he was like, if you're around the Bend area, I'd love to meet you. And there's a lot of really cool people here at the OSU Cascade campus, and I'd love to introduce you to them. And from that invitation, I was able to meet Kaylin O'Brien Feeney, who is our Director of Outdoor Recreation, as well as the first gentleman, Dan Little, who is the husband of our Governor, Kate Brown, which eventually led to the other opportunities mentioned earlier. So again, with great pleasure and honor and privilege, I'd like to introduce you all to the founder of Latino Outdoors, Jose González.
Awesome. Muchas gracias, Xavier. I remember that time in that meeting all too well. And I think it's important to stress that power of invitation, but I think the manifestation of the intention that we set forth in terms of this community and how we are paying it forward as we're building it out as well. So muchas gracias. And Karen as well. Thank you for that gift. Extremely grateful that I get to also connect with you in other spaces and for this offering. And it is with that I want to start by saying good morning, buenos dias. I'm going to be sharing a few slides. And in terms of sharing the slides, just know that they are coming as complementary, connecting, and also different engagement points from what I'm sharing. So don't overly stress if you feel you missed something, and we can always bring those up into the quick Q&A. Okay, perfect. So to start, we're here for a couple of things, but I wanted to start by greeting you from the ancestral, traditional, and stolen lands of Nisean, Southern Maidu, Miwok, and other indigenous communities and nations, what is now Sacramento, California. So just below many of you there in Oregon. To me, this serves as a reminder, not merely that the lands on which we work, gather, recreate, and travel were originally stewarded by many before us on Turtle Island, Avia Yala, and other respective names for this land, past and present. And this recognition is only one step in a reparative process that is justice-oriented and addresses historic and systemic injustices, and really ensures that it is a focus point of how we need to be attentive of not perpetuating erasure, since so many communities, through persistence and resistance, are still here. And this is how we start, so that as we tackle this work together, we do not shy away from the complexity of the problems as we engage in the needed creativity and expertise of this community, of this group, of all of you. And so that we honor the intention and reframing, the intention of reframing the conversation from bringing more people in to how our work in outdoor recreation can serve the health, cultural, economic, and social priorities of diverse communities in Oregon. And some of this can help us be able to tackle some of the very questions we've had before you. And I think not just the outdoors as a platform is a component, but this as a community. I recall doing a training with the group Latinx Explorers in Hood River several years ago. And the excitement of Latinas curious and eager to learn about going outdoors and to continue the relationship building they had been fostering through Zumba classes and other health programming. We're there to provide an introductory framework so that they could plan their own outings with the community while also continuing their work and role as community health workers. We'd support these connections, but it would be successful because of them. It's their curiosity and commitment in a space of cultural affirmation. I really wanted to stress the point that as we started on the trail, for me, many years even before that, I would face the question of how I would feel as if I was supposed to leave my cultura at the trailhead, as if I needed to dress in different and particular ways. What would indicate that this is a space for me and that I was a space for it? What I could tell the group was that we get to be able to do that the support comes from being ourselves as we learn new skills and approaches. That much like being bilingual, it was an additive process rather than an either or. To me, it was a way to be ambicultural as we reflected ourselves in being part of an outdoor culture. And it was this sense of cultural connection that could make a difference, not just for them, but also the community members they would invite on outings, an opportunity present by simply being themselves. It was a small example of what we mean when we talk about being seen, heard, and valued, and even when we talk about culturally relevant approaches. I start this to ground a direct experience with some of the key realities at hand. First, the demographic inevitability that 2050 will look very different from 1950 in the US. And this is not from a simple, there will be more people of color and we need them to engage or be part of the outdoors. This means engaging with the necessary and crucial questions of ensuring that such communities are not mere objects of programming. But it's also to reflect on what that means in terms of decision-making spaces and shared and transitional power. This also impacts larger struggles from the ongoing protection of our public lands, of course, on which much of our work relies, as well as the larger role of climate change, since there is no planet B. And my job really isn't to tell you how to do what you're already good at doing. I'm here to support in what I understand you've agreed to undertake, a growth process and framing for how to do what you do better in relationship, not just to engaging, but also valuing and co-creating with difference. If one of our goals and intentions is to connect Oregonians of all backgrounds and abilities to the outdoors, then we have to acknowledge and engage with the realities that the reasons why it hasn't been the case is not purely from individual choice. We cannot assume that the situational space in which our outdoor spaces were designed in with the different demographic in the past are the best conditions in which to thrive in a justice-oriented future. And hence, that stating Black Lives Matters and supporting Native sovereignty is essential to our work. And this can be helpful in that when we look at questions of who engages in the outdoors and why not, even these two slides can serve as a contrast to that example, that if we ask the question of interest in hiking, we can see how a Black identity here reports relatively low at 19%. And yet when we frame the questions as interest in walking outdoors, how that goes up for everybody. And so I've often thought about that question as, well, what is the difference between hiking and walking outdoors? And how if we don't pay attention to the constructs that we present and how we even approach the conversation, we can miss some key things. Because the other realities are that much of the spaces we enjoy and on which we are reliant for our work are born from systemic, structural, and historic oppression and exclusion that were not random and happenstance. We built places and spaces with only some in mind, and this has an effect. Privilege is not being able to see and account for that you see the world as normative without accounting how that is not the case for whom the spaces were not designed and built. And that the maps we see now are that way for a reason. A classic example in the urban setting, of course, is redlining and how that has an effect. I can share an example from one of the areas in which I've lived, which is the San Francisco Bay Area, which can be seen as highly progressive and yet still starkly segregated, and how that has had impacts on health at the moment, whether it's asthma maps or it's COVID maps, and that this is the same for places like Portland as well. And in this case, how we can mirror heat maps over all the redlining maps. And so these are connections between the policy decisions of the past as well as current health concerns, and that this does have a connection in relation to the outdoors. So this can be discomforting for many and some to hear. But if we are serious about equitable approaches and inclusion, then we acknowledge that those spaces may need to change. It is one thing to invite more people to the proverbial table. It is another to know that the table itself may need to change. I know this is not new for some, and many of you still I want to I still want to stress that I know this is not new, and yet the framing is important so that all of the creative, passionate, innovative energy of this field goes into incorporating this rather than challenging or dismissing it. We know that we can no longer afford the delays of the shifts and changes from the realities I've mentioned, and we have begun to account for more. I see this as an invitation that we can make it happen. In the same way that maps of now reflect our choices from the past, we can envision the maps of the future and how we can shape them now. We often hear the question of what are the barriers to more equitable outdoor access? For which, yes, there are some that center around cost of access and gear, transportation, valuation, and a host of other things. Still, one that I see reflected often is the feeling of being safe and being welcome, of belonging and connection, where the primary safety concerns are both perceived given a new space, especially if we're inviting any for their first outdoor experiences, and also real, giving a different lived experience. This is one part of the value, strength, and necessity of affinity groups, for example. And if you have not had to consider that, it is because you may benefit from the privilege of having the space around you designed such that it is normative for you with the expectation that it should be so for others. This was part of the reason why early on I wrestled with having to leave my cultura at the trailhead, and why with the founding of Latino Outdoors, we would sometimes get questions and challenges like, well, why a Latino Outdoors if there's no white outdoors? Of course, without reflecting on that question and statement. One example I reflected on is how I've processed and shared leave no trace principles, for example. I've noticed how they are one set of guides in minimizing our impact and harm on the land. I say one because they come from an axiology and epistemology that is Eurocentric from settler colonialism. What I mean by that is just how what's the information and knowledge that we value and why. Now, is our leave no trace principles helpful? Definitely. And also, I acknowledge that it's a response to very harm inflicted by a mechanistic reductive frame of valuing and devaluing the natural world. This is important because indigenous communities certainly have had a different framing and starting point. Still, when I use leave no trace as a framing, I also ask participants to think now, what would a set of principles be in reducing harm and impact on each other as we're asking to do with the land? What does equity, inclusion, and diversity in the form of heart and care work look like that we can practice with each other? That allows us to co-create and leverage our communal creativity and expertise to do that for each other, to know better and do better for inclusive practices. Because yes, there are some basics and fundamentals in terms of the human experience in the outdoors. And it is also the case that it can be very different experience if you are Black in the outdoors, and why it's tragic that we even have expressions such as fill in the blank while Black. As well as if you are Native, that there is a caution in terms of how you may be prescribed how to recreate an ancestral homelands in restrictive ways, and so on for a host of other impacted communities. So my invitation and challenge to us is to consider how we apply our current principles and philosophy to continue to ensure that these experiences are equitably accessible to an ever-changing demographic. Here I apply another outdoor skill, reading a map. We know there is a difference between knowing our destination and getting there. A map by definition is selective information, and some maps are definitely better than others. But good maps can help with markers, waypoints, and reading the landscape so we can orient ourselves accordingly, so we can navigate with a certain degree of confidence and safety. But it's still up to us to hit the trail. It's still up to us to do the walking, to hike to the destination. What lets us know where we are and that we're there? This can help us set metrics and considerations for the journey. For example, when I look at goals and aspiration of this conference, if we seek to rebuild a culture of environmental stewardship, cultural celebration, and health through outdoor recreation, it is important to ask how co-creation is happening and what is the foundational philosophy of the environmental stewardship we are promoting. If we seek to develop a network of trails for traveling within and between Oregon communities, then we can ask how and where and why trails are situated where they are and how they support safety while challenging the risks impacted communities face. And if we seek to support sustainable entrepreneurship and a thriving and inclusive outdoor recreation economy as a crucial economic recovery strategy for Oregon, then it is important to see who benefits from that. What are the demographics of such entrepreneurs even to start? And many more. Again, I know many of you are already embarked on this work. There are connected initiatives from the Oregon Health and Outdoors Initiative to the Outdoor School. To this, we can connect the Racial Justice Council and what during the pandemic we reflected as being essential. I believe this is part of it. There is a necessity and opportunity for all of it. Otherwise, we run the risk of our work being for a diminishing few based on historical and institutional exclusion, dependent on what zip code one is born, or other markers or generational, institutional, and racial privileges. Something as simple as knowing that we may perpetuate the school to prison pipeline, rather than being able to think about how the outdoors can be a challenge in a different way of addressing that. And as we expand and shift our perspective and framing, we can lean into an affirming intersectionality rather than one purely based on impacted identity. We see, support, reinforce, and weave new connections between the outdoors, health, education, the economy, and racial justice. Because as Audre Lorde is oft quoted, there is no thing as a single issue struggle because we do not live single issue lives. And we get to expand the cultural construct of the outdoors. So I'll close with a couple of things. First, consider this example. When you see a tree, we can be trained in that human object axiology and cognitive epistemology, where we know the tree through counting and measuring, and the value lies in it being an objectification. This leads to othering, and when we completely otherize, all we may see is utility, ownership, and worth. However, suppose we approached a human multiverse axiology where value lies in balance of relations and that it came with responsibility to be an ecological community. A tree can still have utility, but it is not reduced to purely such. How often do you think about being in breath with the tree? This is part of the gifting and gratitude economy Dr. Robin Wall-Kimmerer asks of us, and can also open us to understand statements such as this one by Kiowa native author and Scott Momaday. It says, "You say that I use the land, and I reply, yes, it is true. But it is not the first truth. The first truth is that I love the land. I see that it is beautiful. I delight in it. I am alive in it." And also Pyramid Lake Paitu native artist Greg Deal. "Today I was asked, what is most important to Indigenous people? The land, protecting traditions, your language, or your people?" And I told them, those are all the same things. For any of us that are relatively new on this journey, and trust me, we all have work to do, fragility can set in, a set of defensive reactions triggered by an examination of our power and privilege that can feel accusatory. To me, this is, again, an invitation to frame that discomfort as an opportunity for learning and growth, rather than withdrawing or harmfully challenge, because we all have a role to play. So if you're committed to this, we need all of you. And for engaging in the discomfort, I offer some questions of consideration that may help, questions that I practice myself as I move in this work as well. Questions such as, why does this unsettle me? What does it mean for me if this is true? How can my unease help reveal the unexamined? Is it possible there are dynamics I don't see? Why? And how does this lens change my understanding? And prior to closing, I'll share part of a favorite reading. I have several, but today I am going to choose a reminder from Robin Wall-Kimmerer and Braiding Sweetgrass. Many Indigenous peoples share the understanding that we are each endowed with a particular gift, a unique ability, birds to sing and stars to glitter, for instance. It is understood that these gifts have a dual nature. A gift is also a responsibility. If the bird's gift is song, then it has a responsibility to greet the day with music. It is the duty of birds to sing, and the rest of us receive the song as a gift. Asking what is our responsibility is perhaps also to ask, what is our gift? And how shall we use it? Stories like the one about the people of corn give us guidance, both to recognize the world as a gift and to think how we might respond. The people of mud and wood and light all lacked gratitude and the sense of reciprocity that flowed from it. It was only the people of corn, people transformed by awareness of their gifts and responsibilities, who were sustained on the earth. Gratitude comes first, but gratitude alone is not enough. Other beings are known to be especially gifted with attributes that humans lack. Other beings can fly, see at night, rip open trees with their claws, make maple syrup. What can humans do? We may not have wings or leaves, but we humans do have words. Language is our gift and our responsibility. I come to think of writing as an act of reciprocity with the living land. Words to remember old stories, words to tell new ones, stories that bring science and spirit back together to nurture our becoming people made of corn. And so you're here because you care. You came together and created this space to craft new stories, new narratives, and new ways of being outdoors. Such is the power of creation. You are creating the maps of the future. You are storytellers. You are future ancestors. I believe in such capacity, and I believe in you. And this is the opportunity before us. Y como siempre, si se puede, so let's make it happen. With that, thank you, and we will move to some Q&A. All right, as Hillary has indicated there, you're welcome to submit a question using the Q&A feature. I'll also keep an eye on the chat. And I believe Jonathan also may be directing some questions as well. So please ask away. All right, I do see one question that says, can you speak more to intention? It's a good question. I will interpret it in the following and hope I have not misinterpreted the question. I look at intention in two ways. In the work of equity, inclusion, diversity, and so forth, we often talk about an agreement based on how you support positive intention while tending to impact. And that allows us to be able to at least do two things. One of them is ensure that if we work together and acknowledge that the intention is there, then we can actually tackle the harm that may come through impact. And so that's important. And then that also allows us to actually do better and work on an actual behavior change that can ensure we move with that. And then lastly, on the other component around intention is what I found in the work of engaging outdoors, it's knowing that, intention is important and it's not enough, and yet it's foundational. Paying attention to impact matters. So even as I said, in terms of those maps, we're able to not get overly caught up on, well, we didn't mean it, or we didn't know, or what all that work was. It's how do we design differently? And if the intention can be grounded on that work of decentering oneself, doing the work to reframe and rethink differently, then it can leverage the value of diversity, which we know in the ecological space brings forth resilience, it brings forth strength, it brings forth adaptability, and so forth. And so that's applicable for the human space, also knowing that as humans, we have different gifts. And I also see, I'll stay tuned for you, Jonathan, how to avoid harm from power sharing and decision making. Yeah, it's a great question. In justice, one way that I interpret justice-oriented work is how we ask the question, what power am I willing to give up? And then the conversation or reflection that comes from that. It's very different if you say none or I don't want to, then don't be surprised in terms of the work that comes there. But if the question is to say, I hadn't thought about what power I hold and what it means to give up power, which doesn't automatically means, people think it's a zero sum. It can be a question of how do I expand that? How do I transition that? How do I co-share it? And I think the last reminder is, it's not a question of if, but when we make a mistake. So we will stumble, we will trip, and harm may happen. It's what is the space that we have created to ensure that we move together with that for restorative healing and work, rather than having it be another reason for why work cannot continue, and an affirmation of biases, for example. It's as the expression comes from another author, how do we break together rather than break apart, and stay in the room with our vulnerability rather than retreat in pain.
Okay, can you hear me now, Herbert?
Still scratchy background.
Oh, okay, just a moment.
Problem. I'll keep reading questions if that helps. Let's see.
There we go.
Yeah. All right. I have a.
Okay.
So one question: do you have any real-world examples you could offer of land managers doing this important work? It's a great question. Most recently, I wrote a piece in High Country News about thinking about how closing all parks can be helpful and necessary in terms of it's just an application at that time, and that I said equal closures, you have to pay attention to how that can have unequitable impact, especially on communities who've already faced a deficit of outdoor and nature access. And that it's not an easy question. Again, it's not an either or, but rather if you think that you already had some communities in a hole, essentially, and this was only going to deepen the hole. So you needed to think through that rather than just purely relying on the response. And my editor for that told me that she was having a conversation with the refuge manager out of I really forgot the name of the urban National Wildlife Refuge in Albuquerque, and that they read that, and that because of that, they decided to keep the refuge open and think about what that meant in terms of preparation and response, rather than just purely saying, we know that an quote unquote, easier and still appropriate response could have been to just close the refuge.
Thank you, Jose. And there was another one. I'm not sure if you caught this one. It said elaborate on giving up your cultural at the trailhead. Why?
Yeah. I was saying, leave your cultura at the trailhead. And so part of that comes as a classic example of what makes you outdoorsy. What is it about the way that you dress? Even the things that we eat. What are kind of quote unquote normative expected behaviors? One way that I view foundation of culture is what's comfortable and familiar, because it lets you know when you're in a culture is you fit in, you belong. There's things that tell you you're part of it, and then there's things that tell you you're not a part of it. And so if you can't tell, it's because there are norms, mannerisms, behaviors that let you know you belong. And there's too many accounts of, especially youth of color, right, hiking and getting that look, or getting or having feelings that it's important to listen and express. And for me, it was as simple as what are hiking pants, right? What should I do that? And I had never heard of granola or trail mix. And of course, you can say, well, no, you can eat whatever. It's yes, and I can eat whatever, but you still navigate that kind of moving in the culture, and how much of the culture is telling me, hey, if you're gonna hit this outdoor space, then you'll belong by looking like this, by dressing like this, by having this type of gear, by acting in these specific ways. So that was that reference.
Perfect. Awesome. I think we have another one in the chat as well in the Q&A. How do you suggest we find common ground with visitors who may not believe or oppose the perspectives being presented regarding history or current events? I know we don't want to alienate them, but I'm also concerned with protecting the employees, our visitors, and community members whose perspectives is being presented from prejudice and the emotional trauma that can happen in those situations.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say
I
would say real quickly on that. It's not easy, right? Well, let me rephrase that. There's ways in which it's not easy or simple, and there are ways in which it is easy or simple. And if we really wanted to tackle this, we would have done it. But part of what makes this hard is because it abuts against that power and privilege of how much are you willing to give up. And like I said, that discomfort. I've often said that it's white discomfort that pushes or crushes progress. If it's important enough, it'll make it happen. So in this specific example, it's that sense of saying, hey, in the same way that some people will not believe in climate change or science, there are ways in which it doesn't make certain things untrue or go away. So I've been able to say, what is doable and actionable for me? Because the worst that happens is that we made the world a better place, right? If we take this action. If we don't do it, then we're defaulting to what the already status quo is. And this is why people say it's not enough to be non-fill in the blank. You have to be anti-fill in the blank. And so I'll close by kind of saying, when you think about centering an impacted community, that can actually benefit everybody. Just as the same way in which they took sidewalks and said, if we make these accessible for people that need to use wheelchairs, all of a sudden you found that pedestrians, moms with strollers, cyclists, like a whole other set of community members took that as a given and as it made it better for everybody rather than seeing it as a barrier or inconvenience.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you, Jose. Listen, I know we're winding down, and I want to be able to make sure we give enough time to you to let people know where they can find you, where they can learn more, where they can support. I know Latinos Outdoors, but I know you and Tommy are doing an amazing work. But I want to make sure we spend our last minute to give you the platform to let us know how we can better support your initiatives, and then we'll break away for our next round of panels.
Of course, fantastic. Thank you so much. I would just quickly say, yes, do support the work of Savi and Latino Outdoors. Easy to find on Google. If you want to follow me on social media at Jose Bilingue, please do. And I think the most important thing that I can encourage to everybody is there's the sense of like the root and shoot of the first seed, which can be scary, especially in the dark. But if you're guided by the light and by nurturing and that courage of like taking that first leap, it's part of what makes it happen. So I hope that you don't, you're not scared to do it. And even if you are, that you can be supported in community and we can make this happen.
Thank you so much, Jose. We really appreciate you spending this time and really sharing so much information and knowledge that even I think the industry is involved in. It's always different to hear it and see it when you're coming from the right place, and the work that you're doing is out of this world. So I appreciate you sharing, and I want to break it off for our next round of folks. So we're going to take what you share with us and really elaborate that in so many different ways, and share an amazing conversation with some amazing people that are affected by everything that you're just talking about, as well as people that are really creating those change within those different niches that exist within our community. So thank you again, and you have a great rest of your week, and we look forward to seeing more from you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, guys. Well, thank you. Again, if you're at home, I know we can't hear you, but I would still give him a round of applause for sharing such knowledgeable information that means a lot, and it actually is the root of the work. As the root, as the first shoot and root, he said, and in reading that piece, I definitely recommend that you read that on Medium, one of his really great write-ups that really share a lot of knowledge that broke things down, well thought of. So next, we want to get ready to bring in some amazing people that we've been serving up as well that will continue to dive into what Jose was mentioning within the communities and what that looks like for actionable items and creating and sharing power and change. And we're going to have our folks come on. We're going to have, let me see if they're ready. We have, I'm going to give them just their name, and then I'll let them tell a little bit about themselves. So we'll have Palani Bearghost, who's going to be coming in with us. We'll have Andrew Campbell as well, and we'll have Mavis Hartz and Herbert Beaucler. They should be joining us digitally shortly, and then we'll get ready to get this panel discussion going on. Let's see. You guys there? Oh, there they go. Awesome. Well, hey, everybody. Well, yeah, so thank you for joining us. I'm happy to see the extra smiles and faces. It's good to see you guys again. I know we had a little preliminary call where we had a good discussion about some of the things we wanted to talk about, so I'm very excited to share and tell that story with everybody that's here with us. And especially after that amazing hot seat that, Jose just left us with, that we can take up and really elaborate on and share some thoughts and just create more for our spaces. So I'll pass it on. I would love for you guys to just tell us a little bit about who you are. I'll pass it to Palani first and let us know, why you're here.
Emenyachi Api Palani Bearghost. I'm the CEO and founder of NEO, No End of Designs. There's a beginning, but there's no end on your creative journey. It's infinite. I'm with my business. I have a neo-contemporary traditional design. It's streetwear and also athleisure for athletic wear, sportswear, and lifestyle. I created my business in 2013 and have been still here and working with different groups of people, especially Indigenous people. It was built and founded on, and also I work with the LGBTQ and other BIPOC communities in terms of partnerships, and also creating a platform for a safe place to create, express, and also help provide artistic freedom, and also create and pave the way for the up and coming future generations.
Thank you, Palani. Thank you. I'll pass it to you, Andrew.
Good afternoon, everyone. So a great presentation as well. I'll say I'm Andrew Campbell with Multnomah County Health Department with the REACH program, which is racial and ethnic approaches for community health. And our goal is to reduce the health disparities within the Black community, which is like the African American, but then also the African immigrant and refugees community in Multnomah County. And I just really like to be more in tune on just building the awareness of how the built environment impact our health. And I always enjoy the outdoors as a way to just mentally reset, especially during this COVID time. It's a great way to reset and refuel and being in tune with Mother Earth. So thanks.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Much well said. And we're going to pass it to Mavis next. Oh, Mavis, do that. There you go.
There I am. Okay, I'm Mavis Hartz. I live in Eastern Oregon in the Grande. I grew up not too far from here. I was invited to the panel because I do a lot of work with, I used to teach, and I no longer teach. Now I own a bike shop, and I'm on several ODOT committees, and we're really working on making it achievable for people to walk and bike and get where they want to be. And of course, as a bike shop owner, I like getting people out on mountain bike trails and things like that. So that's really my bent, and trying to make people successful.
Awesome. Thank you, Mavis. And then Herbert, take it away.
Hello, how's it going, everybody? My name is Herbert Beauclere. I'm the co-founder of Sneaker Week PDX, which is a platform to connect the footwear industry with the global sneaker community. I'm also the creative director of brand and marketing at PENSOLE Academy, which is independent footwear design academy. So we work directly with brands to identify design talent, and essentially is a pipeline for aspiring designers to get placed in footwear brands. Also do a lot of work with Athletic and Outdoor Young Professionals, or AOP, a part of Prosper Portland, to make sure that we continue to promote all the great opportunities within the athletic and outdoor industry as well. And I'm super excited for this conversation.
Awesome. Thank you guys for sharing a little bit about yourselves. As you guys know, we really wanted to dive in and talk about some of the things that are actually taking place around our world today, and be able to translate that and how the outdoor recreation community and industry can actually have an impact on creating social change and social movements that support these communities and initiatives that you guys are all pushing in different spaces, whether it's access, awareness, creativity, into the same form of creating that sense of community in the outdoors. So I know like we said in our first call, we had some very thoughtful things that we wanted to discuss, but I really wanted to dive into a little bit as well, as far as thinking about what you guys do on a daily basis as well. So we all know what issues exist in the world, and we all know the ways that we individually combat them. But starting with Palani, I know one of the ways you do it is through your art and through your design and through your ability to lead your community in spaces that they're really traditionally not in, because they're not in the space where they have access or awareness to do that. So you really drive it from your fashion space, but also from your culture and your tradition. So the question I have for you was, how do you use tradition and culture with your community and in the industry in order to drive access and opportunities for the outdoors? And then with that, how can people here support that?
Yes, so with the outdoors and going back to traditions and culture, as an Indigenous woman and as Indigenous people, we go back with connection with Mother Earth in terms of developing and providing a stewardship with Mother Earth. And that goes back with not only Mother Earth, but the plants, the animals, in terms of having that as being Mother Earth as a life source and not a resource, and being in gratitude with the things that she provides and what she has provided, and only taking in moderation of what you need. And also that goes back to hunting. For us as Indigenous people, when we would hunt, we would provide for our tribal communities and our families, but we would use every part of the animal. Nothing would go to waste. And going back to taking that philosophy and those traditions and culture and bringing that back in to being a designer, and what that looks like with sustainability and not being wasteful in what we're using in terms of what we're creating, and only creating small collections. And as far as Neo goes, that's why it's very exclusive, and why I only create smaller collections, because I don't want to mass produce. And that also goes back to the labor in terms of how you're creating this, and also what the carbon footprint is, not only as people, but as what we're creating with our designs. And that goes back to creating less or zero waste, and how that plays an effect to the materials that are also used in terms of sustainability, with organic cottons and other fabrics that are going to be more friendlier to use and more sustainable to use. And as Indigenous peoples too, I think that they're going to be the ones that are going to be leading the forefront in terms of sustainable designs. And it's going to take a minute for the larger scale in terms of like H&M or Forever 21, who do mass produce, and what that looks like in the fashion industry as a whole. So in terms of bringing that into some of your beliefs as your brand. And for me as a brand, I definitely want to weave my traditions and culture into that, and also being able to speak on that, to promote that also for our up and coming generation, so that they understand some of those beliefs too, and how we can reduce our carbon footprints. So I think that that's important. And also just to do the research around that, some of the nonprofits and smaller grassroots organizations that have been doing that is the Native Outdoors, also Dig Deep, which is it's a nonprofit working for water rights and having clean water in Indigenous communities, and raising that awareness so that everybody has the right to clean and access to clean water. And then the Native Outdoors promote Indigenous communities to be able to connect back and go back out into Mother Earth and be able to learn about the native plants and the medicines and how we can harvest those, plant those, and then utilize those, kind of getting away from Western medicine. So being familiar and also just having that connection. And then also the canoe journey. We have the 7 water canoe journey. I would recommend if people want to get involved, just do the research and the aspects of how you can be involved, and give back into, the different communities. Also, Grande tribe has been doing amazing. They just did Voices of the Resilience, where they're giving back to a healing center to the Navajo Nation for domestic violence and people that have, experienced rape and other horrible things. But it's like, how you can get involved is, do the research and also collaborate with these artists, these leaders, these activists, have and provide a seat at your table, because to be a positive allyship, to get a different perspective, and also to learn from the wisdom of the ancestral knowledge of the elders and the gatekeepers and the innovators and the creators that have survived, the genocide and survived biowarfare, chemical warfare. Like, welcome them, and honor them and respect them and provide a seat at the table and collaborate, create, cultivate. That's what I love what you're doing, Jonathan, because you just did this. This is a prime example of what you just did, and us talking about earlier, talk to people that don't look like you, but don't even go beyond that. Provide a seat and have so they could sit at the table, so you can dive in and go in depth and substance and go even deeper than that and figure out solutions, because Indigenous peoples are visionaries. So thank you again for having me sit at your table.
No, this is, we're thankful that you even came to sit with us and to have these conversations, because we know it's tradition. We talked about tradition and culture earlier. It was, tradition and culture can go hand in hand, or it can be something that's versus in a lot of ways, and we can fight both of those. And I think that's most important, of how you use not just your design and your brand and your business, but your energy and the way you create your community and the way you support your community and the way you empower the people that are in your community. You're giving a platform, and I think that's the same way as what you're saying is how people can support. It's giving a space and creating that opportunity for people to do it themselves and see it in themselves, but they have to have that extra support system, which I believe that you do, and Neo Design is leading the way in that, and sustainability, and we'll get into that even more, but that's leading the way. So thank you for sharing that. If anybody has any other thoughts, I'll definitely take a moment. I can move on to our next question as well, which I have a great one for Andrew coming up, which goes into that same conversation as far as what's going on in each community. But Andrew, what are some of the key challenges you've experienced with racial and outdoor equity? And what are some of the solutions that exist now that we should know about as you deal with the things within reach?
Yeah, so I think like some of the key challenges, I know Jose said a few of them within his presentation, is really being how certain policies and decisions that were made way back in the day still impact a lot of communities of colors today. For example, like the redlining example that he shared, how a lot of communities of color, they was in neighborhoods where they had more worse health outcomes. So a huge challenge is to trying to restore and fix those systematic isms within urban planning and transportation planning. And it takes a long time to address those challenges and fix those systematic policies. So I feel like that's one of the huge challenges. Other challenges I've realized and becoming more aware of is like a lot of at these decision-making tables that's creating the future Portland or the future metro area, wherever that individuals are at, they lack community engagement from Black and brown voices. So you have all these planners that do not look like the community that they're trying to plan, and and that can harm the community compared to trying to bridge, to trying to get that community involved with the planning to see how the culture can be seen within the built environment. So I see that's a huge challenge too, because I know in certain areas within Multnomah County, the data proves like and shows how a lot of the people of the communities of color, they lack sidewalks, they lack certain parks, they lack certain trees in which have more health disparities and diabetes and asthma and things. And I feel some of the, you can go ahead, John, if you was going to say something.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm gonna piggyback up.
All right, my bad. And then I know a few solutions I think that systems and public or private or nonprofit that people can do is just really be more intentional to get Black and Brown communities involved with certain local committees and certain boards, especially if they're trying to plan for the next 20 years. I know one thing that I've been trying to do with my own work is like, I developed this Black transportation workshop that really builds the awareness of the transportation lingo, but then also just getting more Black and Brown folks more comfortable to sit at these committees and to share their concerns of how they can better their neighborhood, especially if they're going to be in a neighborhood for more than 5 to 10 years. Because within the urban and transportation field, and even in public health field, they're always planning for the next 20 years, right now, with or without certain community input. So that's just a few, just my little input on, like, you know, how the challenges and solutions to really help bridge that racial and outdoor equity. So really to invest, gotta have publics invest in that, in community of color. So.
And I'll throw it back to any of our other panelists to follow back up any questions. And I know I kind of chopped off and jumped straight into your question too, so I know if you have any thoughts with Palani, I definitely want this to be an open conversation. But I wanted to make sure I gave some questions that you guys felt that you wanted to make sure we give us special knowledge and we walk away with some actions that go back to your communities as well, and the community you serve. So any thoughts or any pieces? Because I definitely have a follow up myself.
I have to agree with boosting social economic economies in terms of, BIPOC communities and being able to provide resources to help them be successful in whatever that may be. Personally, I've been working directly with Oregon Native American Chamber, and I'm very thankful for that organization because they have reached out, and in terms of boosting the Native economies, whether that be, connecting like-minded individuals together, also providing like the small business legal clinic for like lawyers and accountants and things like that. Also educational opportunities in terms of, business classes or business, workshops or things that you can attend. So I think that, but people don't know how or sometimes where to connect those things or connect the dots. And so, and also mentorships. I think that that would help too, with mentorships with other people like yourself. I've seen you doing that a lot. You even did that to me, Jonathan, with writing proposals. And now I'm writing tons of grants and proposals. And I was like, whoa, why wasn't I doing this before? But now it's like, you come into different phases of your life. And so like Andrew was saying, I think that us as people, how can we come collectively together to help, learn from one another, listen to one another, grow from one another, and things like that.
Yeah.
So I definitely agree with
that's,
that.
I definitely agree, and I think it's one of those things that you say. It's reflection is a thing too, right? And you see these programs coming up, and if they're not reflecting the community, or if they're if there's somebody, even if they are of color, but they're not even from that community, I mean, there's still a different kind of reflection. You want to make sure. So I think just as you mentioned, I mean, and that's Palani mentioned this as well, is creating space, but also creating that understanding of what space means, and then how to develop that space. So it's not just a moment in time, but it creates that 20-year plan. It's embedded in that 20-year plan. Those actions that create that access, specifically for outdoors. Because I mean, if it's hard for people to get at sidewalks, I would imagine how much harder it would be to get to outdoors, and what that means, getting past past the sidewalk. So, any other thoughts or questions for Andrew? No.
No, I really, I appreciate both Andrew and Palani's point of view in regards to, when you think about design, and I'm just coming from a design background, and specifically when we talk about products or just using design as a solution, the idea of learning from other cultures and other people, typically in the first point of like problem solving or within design is, you're identifying the problem, you're identifying, what research, what needs to be done. And to Andrew's point of view, in regards to, using the data, like there's a lot of information that's out there. And I know a lot of people that are, watching this seminar as well have access to some of that data. They understand, hey, there are some problem areas. And to Palani's point, just having these conversations, being able to learn from people, including them into the process, for me as a designer, that's always like step one is you identify the problem, whether that is looking at the numbers or just, what's in plain sight, and listening to people and saying, hey, we don't feel included, or, hey, we've been hearing a lot of chatter around, being able to kind of broaden our market and our audience and who we're talking to. And the first step of like finding the solution is listening or doing the research. And you save a lot of time when you just, start a conversation. You can learn a whole lot by just talking to somebody. Save you a lot of doing research that might not be inaccurate and why not get it from the horse's mouth. So I definitely, agree with both of their points. And for, the people that are out there, I definitely think, a conversation is a great way to, get answers and start moving towards solutions.
I just always like to joke around and be like, people will be surprised how rich a conversation will be over some good food.
Well, yes. Oh, well, that's, I think, tying it even further, I think it's a big part of education, right? Before you do anything, you got to learn it, really. And sometimes learning can come hard or tough. Or tougher or easy to some. But I think that's the point of, like we talked about, just creating some form of discomfort, because that allows for some idea that there needs to be some form of movement to allow for, not just for one's comfort, but everyone's comfort. And it's not just these communities of color, and it's not just the social change. It's actually, Palani mentioned it, Andrew mentioned it, I'm sure Herbert's going to mention it, but it's, the world, the planet, our Mother Earth. How are we treating it? How are we sustaining it? How are we making sure that, in spite of all of our faults and our errors in judgment and all the things that we're doing as one form of creature on this planet, there's so many other things that we're responsible for that we need to make sure that we're taking care of. And I know education is a big form of that. And I know the work that we do, taking kids outdoors and communities outdoors, really getting them to educating them along the process, not just giving them that experience, but giving them access to tools to do that. And I know for Mavis, I know you're an educator. You've been educating, so this is something that comes natural, obviously, within your business and learning, what you've done within not even just a small business, because you guys are pretty prominent. I looked it up. I was like, man, I need to go to LeGrand. I haven't been to LeGrand in a long time, but I know where I'm going to get a bike for sure. But what you deal with as far as the tourists and the people that come through, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who aren't educated on what goes on with outdoor etiquette and what goes on with sustaining, not just our environment, but local environment and local communities that support people to come here and to do these things. And obviously, the outdoor industry is getting bigger and better as far as people getting outside to understand what's going outside of the cities and off their phones a little bit. But what are some of the things that you've seen that are the newer challenges, especially being as a business owner and as an educator with outdoor etiquette and sustainability for the outdoors?
All right. Some challenges behind sustainability and etiquette kit that I have seen. One, just higher usage. I mean, people are trying really hard to get people out and doing things, and they're succeeding, which is, on one hand, it's great. And then I'm also seeing individuals pushing their skill set. So they're going out, going a little harder than they might have done in the past, trying a little harder, going a little farther out, and sometimes getting themselves in trouble. So those are the two things that I'm really noticing here, is the higher usage and people just branching out a little bit more. Oh goodness.
What?
How to address some of the issues we're seeing, higher usage. The systems need to be set up so that they're easy for people to follow. You know, if you've never done something, or, you know, this is a random example, but around Eastern Oregon, we have a lot of cliffs and we have a lot of raptors. We have a lot of birds, right? And some of my husband and I, we rock climb quite a bit. And some of the routes, they are closed off during parts of the year because these birds are there, right? And one, you don't want to disturb them. And two, you really don't want them to attack you either, because they will.
Right.
You know, if you invade their space, they become dangerous. And so to get people to the point where they're like, oh, this is why this route is in place, maybe I should pay attention to it. To teach people to get them to that spot is sometimes a little difficult, and I'm not quite sure how to streamline it yet. Still working on that one.
No, I think that's a great point, because that's also the form of sustaining, right? Because you're sustaining not just, like I said, the ground, or somebody, you know, throws a bathroom bag on the floor because they're too far away from a trash can, but it's actually not disturbing what's actually there, what's living there, what's actually keeping form there. So I think that's a big part of, you know, a lot of the work that we do is, you know, really educating, like we said, educating people along the way. So it's not just getting them out there and they're not really understanding what to do, how to do it. And I didn't even think about it from a standpoint of somebody who may already be an expert at things and just want to go a little bit further. And how do we better support that conversation? Not just the beginners, but the people that are actually, you know, to do this, and how, you know, how that transitions to getting further without creating a bigger footprint, so to say. So how do we address those different conversations? So any thoughts or questions, Herbert, Palani, Andrew?
Yeah, I really like Mavis's point, because I feel like it, you know, it makes the dialogue like two ways, right? So in the sense of, you know, trying to learn from one another and being able to, you know, continue to create environments that, you know, it is inclusive to everyone and enjoyable to everyone. It's also, how do you make it safe for everyone? So in those educational moments, you know, I would love to, you know, speak to someone like Mavis, because I feel like she would, you know, keep me safe and make sure that, you know, the learning curve is a little bit higher. And I definitely agree with her in regards to, you know, people that, you know, continue to push themselves more and more, because, you know, the outdoors, you know, is very enjoyable, right? You know, as soon as you kind of get a taste of it, you continue to kind of want to do more. And so for me, someone that, you know, hasn't spent, you know, a significant amount of time learning the landscape, as much as, you know, I understand the activities, you know, I think those two-way conversations of, you know, bringing community together, learning from each other, you know, definitely goes both ways, from the person that doesn't necessarily always see themselves there, and how someone can help make that a little bit more enjoyable to that person. But then also for, you know, the person that, you know, can see, hey, this land was traditionally used by natives. You know, how do we continue to make that how do we continue to represent that and reflect that,
right,
and not go the opposite direction? So I love, to Mavis's point, I feel like that kind of opens up a two-way dialogue where, communities can learn from each other.
Yeah, I think that's essentially what Palani was mentioning earlier, just that same conversation, just creating that space and learning from each other. And then also, like I said, the footprint, like making sure that footprint is we know what's there, we respect what's there, but there's also an opportunity to go further, but also what does that mean in creating that space? Because I know traditionally, I know for me, I go camping but I feel tighter in some spaces. I don't feel adventurous in a lot of spaces because that safety part, as you mentioned, there's a wall of safety, not even just safety as far as what's out behind the woods or the next town, but more so even just, do I have the right equipment if I don't have something that goes wrong? If I do need to, with my child, restroom, do I have, the proper tools if we need to do X, Y, and Z? There's a lot of things that go into place. So I think it's also educating, like you said, that two-way conversation to educate along the process and during the process as well. Before the process is a good point. And I think that's essentially a lot of the work that you've been doing, obviously leading with Sneaker Week and some of the things at PENSOLE. So any other thoughts or questions before we take it to another question with Herbert?
I actually had a question for Andrew. Can I ask Andrew a question?
Awesome.
Okay, so Andrew, the other thing I've been doing is a lot of work with Safe Routes to School and all that kind of stuff. And right now they're doing this thing called a STIP. And what they're doing is they're going to the Oregon Transportation Commission, the guys that control where your money goes for building roads and maintaining roads and doing the sidewalks and all that kind of stuff, right? Right now, they're trying to get a vision of where they're going to go for the next 10 years. I mean, this isn't like a flash in the pan. This is a huge amount of money over a long amount of time. So how are you guys tapping into that and making it so that you can build communities so people can walk and bike and do all these things so that later that they can take it out into the outdoors and do things like that? So I just want to kick it back to you and ask kind of your opinion on that whole mess.
Yeah, I know we do. I do some work with Safe Routes to School with Portland and also like the county Safe Routes to School, and we're really, this past year we've been making a lot of like action plans for that particular school. And those action plans will be like forward to ODOT, so they are aware of the issues, and if they have the funds to do infrastructure changes for that particular school, then those funds will go to that. But I know the action plans is a great way where we can make sure certain schools are on the priority list for future funding. And hopefully that helped and answered your question too.
That was a great question. Great question. Anybody else? All right. Well, we keep the conversation going. I think we have one more broad question, but we'll just address it to Herbert. But as we say with every question, they're pretty much for everybody. Herbert, you're a community person that's driven by what's going on in the footwear industry, but also what goes on in multiple industries. How can the outdoor industry better enable communities, businesses, and people of color during social movements such as this? So within everything that you have going on and the programs, how can people gain a little bit more information on that as well?
Yeah, I think we touched on a lot of that with some of the questions that were asked earlier. A lot of the answers, come through conversation. And, for me as someone that, seeks to have conversations about solutions, a lot of it goes back to, the research and evaluating the landscape and understanding, what's actually going on, what's happening within the industry. And a lot of times when you sit back and take a look, you start to see a lot of different trends. A lot of what has happened recently along with COVID, you have a lot of the social injustice movements in which you see a lot of brands, and specifically because that's kind of, my area of focus, working with a lot of the athletic and outdoor brands, is you'll see these commitments to, the Black community in particular, or you see a lot of conversations about diversity and inclusion and equity. And you see these topics, trending, whether it's on LinkedIn or whether it's through social media or just news headlines. And for me, I think, the conversations are a great start. It definitely helps, everyone understand and say, hey, here's an opportunity to listen, here's an opportunity to learn. The commitments are a great, second step forward in regards to saying, okay, hey, we want to learn and we actually want to commit. And, whether it is saying, hey, we're going to put forth a standard, and, we're going to put a better foot forward in hiring and providing opportunities for, people of color, or, whether it is, due to social injustice, or whether it is even putting, money aside for economic relief, even stuff that's due to COVID and the pandemic. I think it's great to commit these funds and as the next step. But I think, a huge step that I noticed that is missing, whether that is through brands and organization, is what is outside of a 5-year commitment. What is a way or opportunity for brands and companies to really kind of change their philosophy in regards to how do we make this a long-term solution? How do we actually change from now? Not when, the money runs out, or not when, these things are no longer trending, but how do we take a look at ourselves and say, hey, this is something that we've learned from our past. How do we not make this mistake again? How do we either, moving forward, make sure that we don't want to represent ourselves, as we did in the past. We don't want to have 7% of our, board, be, outside of the white demographic. How do we basically take a look inside yourself in regards to a brand and say, here's our new standard, and this is where we are, moving forward. And, I love to be a part of those conversations and those solutions. Part of the work that I'm doing within the footwear industry, Sneaker Week is a great opportunity to basically have a platform for brands to connect and to learn with the community. And so it's a way for the industry to interact and really learn and give back and invest in the community, because I know that's, a huge part of, what needs to happen is where is the commitment going? Where are these dollars going? Making sure that it's not going to, just another initiative or campaign, but it actually reaches these people and makes a difference. Also continuing the conversation. So what I do with PENSOLE within the African American Footwear Forum is how do we, kind of have some accountability within the industry to say, okay, if we're committing this money, where is it going? How do we keep track of it? What are the metrics? What are the numbers? How are we tracking progress? When do we come back? A lot of times it feels like it's enough to just say it. But it's also very important that there is some accountability. And sometimes that is having a third party come in and say, okay, hey, we're going to do our due diligence and our job, and we're going to continue to track the progress. And, I think it's been received greatly from the footwear industry. We've had brands from, Under Armour, Nike, Adidas, Puma, Asics, all support this and say, hey, yeah, although this is coming from outside of our brand, although our competitors, are supporters of this, this is larger than us, and there does need to be some accountability. So I think, you see the first step and the second step a lot. I think that third step in regards to accountability and really, a commitment to change is, what I think, specifically for the outdoor industry, and a lot of the outdoor brands, how do you look internally as an organization and say, how do I hold myself accountable? How do I, either invite others to hold us accountable? Yeah, I know that was super long-winded, but definitely.
Well said. Well said. No, go ahead. Well said. I want everybody to piggyback off of that. But that wasn't long-winded at all. That was well said. I think that kind of summarizes everything that we've been talking about. Even Jose mentioning. He mentioned we're future ancestors, and that's the same conversation. It's not just throwing money at things. It's being a part of the solution, long-term solution. Long-term vision and things. So I'll open it up for you guys. We got about 3 minutes left before we wind down. But please piggyback off of that if you have something to share.
And one thing to add, I think it's just even, the idea of having this conversation about collaboration. I think it's great to have a third party or someone outside of your brand to really converse and build a new relationship and saying, hey, this is a goal that I'm committed to. Why not invite a partner in to help you with that goal? So to any of the brands that are out there and the organizations that are out there, I definitely see that as a huge opportunity, to definitely make sure, for one, you hold yourself accountable, but then two, you also have, either another organization or just outside members, looking in and providing that advice and direction as well.
Thank you, Herbert. And I know, Palani, you got something before I wrap it down? And I want to ask you guys one last quick question. It'll be a short one. Go ahead, Palani.
I just wanted to add, in terms of accountability and things like that, and maybe a philosophy or beliefs that, whether it ties into your brand, your business, your personal life, your communities, I guess the indigenous people also believe that it's how you're going to make an impact of what you're doing and how it's going to affect the next 175 years. So you're not looking just presently, but you're looking towards the future, but you're taking back the past knowledge and traditions and cultures and beliefs, and you're interweaving that and you're honoring that. And also, we are all a drop in the ocean, but together we can create waves.
Oh, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's poetry.
Well, I would say then just a last quick question. In one sentence, we can go around. Palani may have just said it, but you got more in there because you're wise. What's one takeaway or challenge you want to leave with our viewers in one sentence? Whether it could be anything, just leave them with one thing. I'll kick it with you, Palani, and then we'll go to Andrew and Mavis.
I'm going to go with we are all droplets. We are all drops and part of the ocean, and we are stronger together, and together we can move mountains and we can create waves, but we have to come together and build those partnerships, build those allyships, set everything else to the side, our differences, our beliefs, but come together collectively and work on towards what our solutions are going to be and moving forward in terms of how we can create a better future and create better for each other, for humanity, and for Mother Earth.
Thank you, Palani. Well said. Go ahead, Andrew.
Well said. And to just piggyback off of all that, what she just said is like, be comfortable being uncomfortable to reach what everything we all said. So we got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. That's all.
Thank you. Love it. Mavis, please. Yeah.
Our goal here at the Mountain Works Bike Shop is to be healthy, be happy, and to make a difference.
I think I missed you right there. You did. Did you guys hear it? Mavis, I think can you say it one more time? I think we lost you at the last minute. We got to do a copy.
Oh, goodness. Am I back? Can you hear me now?
Yep, there you go.
Sweet. So I was just saying that we try really hard to be healthy, as parts of the world and ourselves, and then be happy, at a large scale and a small scale, just happy as a family, and then make a difference. Go out there and if you see something that drives you nuts, maybe you can make it better by getting involved. There you go.
Thank you, Mavis. And Herbert, wrap us up.
Yeah, piggyback off of Mavis, getting involved. For me, I think, I'm huge on creativity. And, I think there's a lot of creativity, within ourselves as well as just within the world and within nature. And so, I think we're all well equipped to be creative within our solutions. You see a lot of creativity within nature, whether it's, how resourceful some of the animals are, or, just kind of, how there is a lot of natural beauty and a lot of natural creativity within the outdoors. And so, if we use that as inspiration and we kind of channel in our own, creativity, I think we can definitely make an impact. I know we can definitely get to a lot of the solutions that we're, aiming towards. And, it's fun being creative. So I definitely challenge, everyone that's out there that's listening. How can you continue to be creative? How can you, continue to be inspired by the outdoors and really make a difference? So, thank you for having us.
Thank you, guys. This is awesome. I really appreciate you guys sharing your words, your wisdom, your energy, your time, your space, your business, your professions, your experience, expertise with us today. This has been a great day. I want to thank everybody who's joined us throughout the day. We're not done yet. We still have a lot more going on. So we're definitely excited to continue this day and close out the 2020 Oregon Outdoor Summit. So thank you guys again for joining us. The Zoom webinar will continue with music and slides during the 1 hour break, starting with a short video of the Oregon Recreation and Conservation Fund from our sponsors, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. At 3:30, we'll continue to return. We'll return with the State of the Outdoor Recreation in Oregon. Preliminary. Okay, I've always had trouble with this word. Come on, somebody help me out. Come on, Palani.
Plenary. It's a virtual plenary webinar.
Thank you. I didn't drink my water yet. And so we'll keep going back. So we'll be back at 3:30. But again, we want to thank all of our partners, all of our sponsors, everybody that has joined us. We want to thank our keynote speaker, Jose. We want to make sure we thank Karen for setting the tone for us and giving us the right space to do this. Savi and what he's doing with Latinos Outdoors. We want to thank Scott Bricker, Stephanie Knoll, Hillary Sager, again, for putting this together. An amazing, amazing event. Like I said, we're not done. We got plenty more to go. So we hope to see you at 3:30. Enjoy. And for any questions that we might have missed during our time with Jose, we want to make sure that you guys understand that we'll save those questions and we'll make sure we implement those in the future conversations. But if there's anything we can do in the meantime, please feel free to reach out to Stephanie or Hillary or anybody that you've connected with over the time. So we appreciate you all, and we'll be back at 3:30. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Paul Winter. I'm the chair of the Oregon Conservation and Recreation Advisory Committee, and I want to talk to you a little bit about the Oregon Conservation and Recreation Fund. My wife and I are fortunate enough to be fly fishing on one of Oregon's wonderful creeks, and we realize how fortunate we are, and all Oregonians are, to possess the incredible natural heritage that's present in this state. In this time of COVID, I think everyone is recognizing how valuable the outdoors are and our ability to get out in them. The Oregon Conservation and Recreation Fund is dedicated to making sure that we preserve and enhance our natural heritage, and also that all Oregonians are able to access the wonderful treasures that we have.
Hello from Cascadia Wild. Our community science project collects data on rare carnivores of the Mount Hood National Forest, connecting volunteers with wildlife while supporting research and management.
Our mission is to restore a population of sea otters to the Oregon coast, and in the process, help make our marine ecosystem more robust and resilient.
Hello from Mochico Trails. We're developing a trail plan for the Ochico National Forest and Crooked River grasslands. Trail use is exploding in our area, and our plan will minimize the effect this increase in use will have on wildlife.
Hello from Trout Unlimited. We are working with Caldera and their students to restore Link Creek to welcome back sockeye salmon to their historic habitat.
And we hope you'll be willing to participate and support us in our efforts. Thanks for listening.